But now it's time to change language, because you know that always Swedes, we are such poor Danish speakers, and the next speakers on stage are Danish, so we will do this in English. The theme, as we said, is creating value, and the next speakers, they are going to talk about their organization, which is creating value for a lot of people, the whole society actually. The old people, the pilots, you're going to meet the pilots soon, the local community, and they are going to give their personal story about a worldwide movement, actually. It started in Denmark, and it's the worldwide movement Danish organization Biking Without Age. Please welcome up on stage the two founders, Dorthe Pedersen and Ole Kassow.
Perfect. Thank you very much for inviting us here. It's a pleasure to be here and now bring you on a journey that has lasted Ole Kassow and myself the last 5 years. We got about 15 minutes to bring you on a 5-year journey, so let's try to hit that. Cycling Without Age first landed in a very close neighborhood in Copenhagen. It landed by the initiative of Ole Kassow, who's sitting here by my side, who, as an act of kindness, turned up at his local care home with a rented rickshaw and went into the coffee room and, as a neighbor, offered his neighborship to bring these, well, especially the old ladies, out on bike rides on this rickshaw. And as you can imagine, one soon raised her hand, and it became pretty contagious, with a young neighbor showing up wanting to take you out on town. But what is very important to notice, that when Ole kept coming back with this rented rickshaw, obviously, logistically, it would have been very nice if that specific care home would have had such a vehicle parked in the backyard themselves. Making contact with the local council in order to raise funds for that one trike, he got in touch with this lady named Dorthe, who happens to be me. And I thought, well, that's pretty cute, and one man and one bike is just not really going to change the world. But how about if we work together, Ole from his platform of a self-employed social entrepreneur, and me as a, what did Lars say, Nordic, Swedish welfare state sort of agent, if we work together and combined our efforts to create a network that could break isolation, that could increase quality of life, well-being, and especially the connectivity between generations in our communities. So we got these first 5 trikes in Copenhagen back in 2013, and we managed to avoid any project description, any management and organizational setup that one could dream of when starting this journey. But we decided to say to these first 5 care homes, please be pioneers. We need to learn from you. We need to understand what the passengers feel when they're sitting in front. We need to understand the motivation and the dedication from the pilots who come in. And certainly we need to understand what sort of difference does it make for the care professionals who now might have a tool that can change their approach to aged care and well-being. So during that first year, we observed what happened, and not like a systematic sort of anthropologist kind of research, but more a networking approach. So we networked 24/7. We reached out to people, they reached back to us, and we were all in this very close neighborhood in Copenhagen, unfolding neighborship at its best by bike. And what we saw was that the generosity, not only from the strong pilot who could go across to his neighboring care home, but also between the elderly sitting in front, just lending that arm or lending that hand when someone is new in the rickshaw, putting the blanket tightly around, nursing one another. We all have the ambition. No matter whether we are 15 or we are 90 years old, we have the ambition to be important to the person next to us. What also unfolded was a lot of storytelling, and I could share stories from now until Christmas and beyond with you from what people have been sharing in Cycling Without Age, not just memory lane stuff from what was Second World War like, but life at present. What does it mean to be an old person? What does it mean to be isolated and cooped up within the same 4 walls of a care home and maybe forgotten by your neighbors, because now the perception is that aged care is something we have delegated to our public sector. So all those stories between generations was what we saw, and what that gives people who might suffer from that potential loneliness. It gave them new witnesses to their life stories and life at present as it can unfold. So those observations that we did actually became our guiding principles. So forget about the project descriptions and stuff, but lean against those 5 guiding principles: the generosity, the storytelling, and especially the without age. Cycling without age has got its name because of a sincere belief that no matter your age, no matter your ability or disability, no matter your life situation, you have a lot to offer to the people in your community, to your neighbors. And we've actually seen how this tool, this old-fashioned tool, a rickshaw, I mean, it's been known for hundreds and hundreds of years, can actually swap the roles between generations. And here's Jörn at the age of 87, 89. He actually became a pilot, even if he started as a passenger. So you're able to swap the roles, go out, play in the fields. Our youngest pilot is at the other end of the age scale. He's only 12 when he first started reaching those pedals with his short little legs. So it soon became very intergenerational, and obviously it's a bit of a treat getting to know what is a selfie stick if you've never known one, or what is a coffee to go, because coffee was served in nice cups at the cafe back in the days, but now you just take them along on the bike ride. Cycling without age allows us connect and bridge any groups in our communities. It allows us to play in the city, to create accessibility for people who might otherwise not have access to still participate. It's rocking up at iconic sites. It's going to your favorite scenery, whether that is the waterfront or the forest or the fields where the cows are playing. It allows you to be part of your city. Obviously, Cycling Without Age has started within a very sort of urban framework in Copenhagen City, where we got the infrastructure that invites us to cycle. But it has expanded throughout the world, and I'll leave that to Ole to talk about. But it has now reached 35 countries, Sweden being one of them. So it's growing. So it's no longer an urban cycling activity. It's the mountains of Switzerland, or it's the snow in Iceland, or it's the sunny beaches of Australia. Cycling without age allows dreams come true. If you're 60-something or 80-something and you've moved into a care home and all you're allowed to listen to are those evergreens that were played back in the 50s, it's pretty sad if you're really a rock music fan and your big fat loudspeakers in your room are hardly ever turned on because the other ones don't like the noise. But isn't it a dream come true when someone younger says, how about we hit the Roskilde Festival and we go to listen to the rock music, and the Roskilde Festival says, of course, this is for all generation, and allows a rickshaw right up the front of the stage. With Cycling Without Age, we try to address issues where people no longer need to just be addressed, to have their care needs addressed. Because honestly, those care needs might be very tiny, but our life needs are this huge, they're ginormous. So from being this person hanging in the hoist, you can become this person who actually influence and participate and have a democratic voice in your society again. It allows you to celebrate the diversity. It was very controversial when we first invited old people to participate in the Gay Pride in Copenhagen City. Nonetheless, we ended up participating with 17 rickshaws, even if we only signed up 4. Because as this old guy was telling us, don't you think our generation can celebrate diversity? And now we've learned that people can. People still have a zest for life, even if they're 102. It still has a value to put on your coat and bring out your wallet or your purse and spend your own money at the hot dog stand. Some people actually don't have a coat when they move into nursing homes because people simply don't think that they're going to leave that place again needing a jacket. So it's giving back the freedom and mobility to people who otherwise don't have access to such. It is giving families a new opportunity to have joyful, cheerful, fun activities together, whether it's a young mother who's wheelchair bound, whose daughter has a dream of cycling with her mother. Well, this fabulous vehicle allows them to do that again. Or a young daughter who comes to the care home, visiting her mother who has got Alzheimer's, and it's all very frustrating with the cognitive ability have gone. But now they can go out on the bikes, and they can go shopping, they can go to the coffee shop. And she's been saying in this radio interview, I'm sitting there pedaling and I'm looking at my mother's proud neck. And if we talk about creating values over the next 2 days, that is the value that we would like to enhance in Cycling Without Age. I think I can proudly say that Cycling Without Age is an award-winning approach to mental health and well-being. And Finn here is a good example of that. If you go to YouTube and Vimeo, you will find great videos with Finn. He actually traveled, left Denmark for the first time when he was at the age of 81. We took him on a long ride to Norway because this is not only about those daily rides that can happen in the local community, but it's also about going on a bicycle holiday when no one thinks that you're someone who can travel anymore. So anyway, he came up to Norway and there was a crew of movie makers who followed us, and they made this beautiful film. And this film was actually chosen for a sports film festival in Los Angeles. Now, hang on, we're talking about health promotion here, where it's usually about the physical exercise and the broccoli and don't drink the red wine and stop smoking and all of that. But here, Finn's movie made it to Hollywood, to a sports film festival. And Finn, we thought, if we can send him to Norway, how about we send him across the pond to Los Angeles? So he traveled across, and luckily there's a chapter of Cycling Without Age who received him over there. Even if he's someone who's got very little lung capacity, he uses a wheelchair, but he walked between 7 and 10 kilometers a day because he was now a tourist. And he came into the screening of his movie and was very anxious whether he was going to win an award. And did he bring home an award? Yes. He brought back the award for being a legendary athlete, for being a passenger in a rickshaw in Cycling Without Age. So basically, what Cycling Without Age does is it gives you a break from whatever life situation, disease, illness, or aging problem or cognitive problem that might have occurred. It gives you a chance to just live life at its best at any age. Let me present Ole Kassow, who would take you around the world. Different music.
So what are the strongest predictors of longevity and good quality of life? Because I think we have all asked ourselves those questions at one point or another. Now, there are two of the strongest predictors that are close relationships and social integration. Researchers at Brigham Young University did a study for a long time trying to figure out what is it that makes people live for a long time and have a really good quality of life? And I'm really curious about that as well. In fact, my wife asked me at some point, while you're riding out with all these people, why don't you try and figure out what is their secret? And I tell you, part of the secret really is that you have some really good, strong, close relationships. Those people you can rely on in the times of despair, who can call the doctor to take you to the hospital. And the second one is the social integration. Not necessarily the strong, close relationships, but the types of people and number of people that you interact with during a day. And when you're in a care home, how many people do you actually relate to and interact with during a day? It's not very many. So we're talking about both the strong and the weak bonds. I'll tell you a little story from a couple of years ago when I was out cycling in one of the small Danish towns called Nakskov. And we were going down memory lane with these two ladies. Now, one of them said, I love apple picking, and there is a nice little apple orchard down the road. Would you mind taking me down there? And so we were sitting there having a good time, and then she said, over there, there's an apple that I can reach. Would you mind taking me over there? So I took her over, and she reached up and grabbed the apple. And then she picked another apple, and then she kind of took up her t-shirt like this and started picking apples. And as you can tell, the other lady was not impressed. She said, why do you have to steal apples when there's so many apples, back down at the nursing home? I said, yeah, but I haven't been stealing apples for years. So it's kind of the right to steal apples. We have this motto called the right to win in your hair, but I think it's actually also about the right to steal apples. It's a right to misbehave. Why do we always have to behave? We have to conform into a certain pattern. And just because we're 80 or 90 doesn't mean that we don't have the need to misbehave. And actually, when this lady came back to the nursing home, she said, today I visited life. And I mean, that's a stark contrast to what it's like being in a nursing home. I was in Ottawa a couple of weeks ago speaking at a conference, and I was talking to this guy who was selling hearing aids, and he said there is a strong evidence that if you have untreated hearing loss, then the likelihood that you're going to develop dementia is going to increase fourfold because you don't stimulate the brain. And actually, if you only treat one side, one ear, then actually one side of the brain is not going to be stimulated, and you can actually develop dementia in that part of the brain. And then, as I studied more into it, it goes for all the different senses that we have. If we don't stimulate those senses, then the likelihood that we're going to develop some sort of a mental impairment is going to increase very, very significantly. So I'm talking about the risk of not using our senses. And this picture, I love this picture, and I'm going to zoom in on this. These two ladies, one of our volunteers in Copenhagen took this photo on one spring day with the blossom of the cherry trees. And she said these two ladies, they could not stop giggling for about half an hour. She could not have a conversation with them. They were just giggling. It was all the seeing the pink flowers and the smelling them and so on, and just the sounds, possibly of the birds and so on. And no wonder if you're stuck within the four walls and suddenly you get out and you have this completely overdrive of sensory experience. And the same thing with the sense of smell and taste. Eating isn't just about eating. The most important thing about a meal is also the social context and the sharing of a meal and the light conversations and the hand me the butter please. That actually very often doesn't take place in a nursing home, and particularly not if you're an elderly person and you're living in your own home. So that is also the kind of stimulation that people really need. Many care homes, they actually struggle with elderly people's appetite. And I can tell you, when we have a picnic like this, there is no problem getting people to eat the food. Or how about Över and Rörelsen, who actually met on a bike? We like this thing about cycling in the wintertime as well. It's a bit like children. People say, the school teachers say, it's too cold, they shouldn't be going outside. But I mean, we as a human species, we are born to living in all kinds of conditions. And if we don't experience all the seasons, then we don't live to the full. And that's why we put a lot of emphasis on actually getting the bikes out every time, even it starts to snow, if it's cold or if it's rainy. And in fact, one of my very good friends that I met on the bike, a gentleman called Torkild, who's 100 years old, he said to me one day when I showed up to take him on a bike ride, and I said, "It's raining outside, Torkild, do you want to cancel?" And he said, "Cancel? What do you mean? I'm not made of sugar. I'm not going to melt." So it's the kind of thing, it's another right here, the right to frosty cheeks. Now, how do we operate? And I was very pleased, and Dorthe and I were very pleased when we listened to Lars Hulgaard earlier on as well, talking about the resistance of the conventional commercial business models. Because, like Dorthe said, we never developed a business model as such. Now, this is a lot of experiments on experiments on experiments, and we operate based on the wheel. So the wheel has a hub on the inside. This is where all the ideas and the dream is. And then we use the spokes to collaborate, and we use the entire global infrastructure that we have. All the volunteers, are over 10,000 volunteers involved in Cycling Without Age in 450 cities worldwide. They are all the builders of this movement. And I could give you an example. A wonderful team in Bonn of changemakers. They have the capacity to act. They are changemakers. 7 students creating a very strong social impact with creativity and entrepreneurial quality and ethical fiber. And everyone can join our movement. We have a very simple affiliate agreement that is really just a social contract. We want to invite people in to co-develop what we started with an experiment in Copenhagen. And now we're seeing universities around the world, we're seeing social entrepreneurs, change makers, people who want to be part of this. And what is the impact of this? Now, if we look at those two things that creates longevity and quality of life, now close relationships, we see a lot of friendships blossoming. We see a sense of purpose. People who may have early retired and have lost their sense of purpose in life because it hinged on their career. And now they're suddenly finding an opportunity to give back to society. And what about the social integration? This wonderful lady that I've been riding with a few times, Inge, who's 97, who used to be a journalist talking to all kinds of people. She always says to me when we're out cycling, "You know, Ollie, there's a baker just down here." And I know what she means when she says there's a baker down here. It means, "Would you please go in and buy me a cake?" And while I'm in buying the cake, when I come outside, she's always engaged in conversation with perfect strangers. And it's all those conversations, all those interactions that you have with people that is so crucial for people's happiness and longevity of life. So, I'm going to finish with saying this. We hope that we're changing the system one ride at a time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank energy. So I think I'll just hold on my questions. We'll just leave it with your energy. Thank you very much, Dorthe and Ole. Thank you. Wonderful story. And Ole said that everybody could join, right? So yeah, I can become maybe also a passenger, but certainly a pilot. I'm looking forward to this.